Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipster Podcast. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I interview founders, thought leaders, executives, entrepreneurs, co-founders, you name it, in crypto and blockchain around the world. And today I have another amazing guest, and this name is really easy to say. And I'm happy about that. So my guest today is the co-founder, and CEO of Pocket Network. His name is Michael O'Rourke. Michael, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jamil. Really happy to be here. And you pronounced my name perfectly.
Awesome. I'm happy about that. So let's kick things off, and I'll ask you the first question. Is this? It's easy. What is your background, and is it a logical background for what you're doing now?
Yeah, what is my background? It's interesting. I find that in the Web3 and crypto space, everyone has an incredibly diverse background. And I'd say mine is more non-traditional. Quickly on myself, I was born in the Dominican Republic in the Caribbean, but from 2 years old, moved to Tampa, Florida. And I say that because when I discovered Bitcoin in 2013, previous to that, I had learned to use Western Union to send money to my family pretty early on, and also had worked at a couple credit unions in 2011 and 2012, selling car loans and credit cards and that sort of thing. And after seeing thousands of credit reports, you kind of see how messed up the financial system can be for some people. And as a result, after stumbling across an article on Wired magazine about Bitcoin in 2013, I kind of started to really dig deep into the rabbit hole. Stumbled onto the subreddit, read the white paper. Then I became, just someone who's just purchasing Bitcoin and just kind of reading along the news and that sort of thing. And in 2013, 2014, I was also becoming an iOS developer at the time. And that kind of led me to developing my first smart contract on Ethereum in 2016. And I've really only had a couple through that process. I've had a couple moments where I've really been just mind blown when I'm doing something related to engineering or coding. First one is making my first HTTP request. The second one was deploying my first smart contract, because you deploy this program and for the first time you're just like, wow, this is unbelievable. I can't believe that I can't get rug pulled by Twitter APIs or Facebook APIs or Google APIs. And that for me was just a really seminal moment that led me to just dig even deeper. And really, since I was learning to code, I was able to actually contribute and build, because at the time, Bitcoin was very difficult to really contribute to unless you're one of the core kind of Bitcoin developers working on the client. And yeah, that got me really excited. My co-founders and I were working at a startup down in Sarasota, Florida at the time, and started experimenting with different ideas of what we wanted to do. And at the time, we used various infrastructure providers while we were kind of experimenting with these different ideas. The first idea was something called Telcoin, where we wanted to tokenize your cell phone data and incentivize people to build these 5G cell towers and all these different things. And we kind of realized that was far too, it was too early for that to really happen. But through that process, we had basically used various different infrastructure providers, built a couple test apps, and kind of triangulated across this idea of incentivizing full nodes. After reading various forum threads, traveling to different conferences and that sort of thing. And that's kind of what led to Pocket Network. But I would say, just with my background, to answer your question, one, born in the Caribbean, understand what it's like to live out there or in countries like that. Played a ton of video games growing up, so this idea of digital value was not foreign to me. And then, of course, what I think really radicalized me was working at these credit unions for a couple of years in 2011 and 2012. Which led me to Bitcoin and kind of led the path to where we are today.
Interesting. I haven't had many guests from the Caribbean, had a few, but I will ask you about that a little bit later. I do want to find out first what Pocket Network is all about. And then you said something that I have a follow-up on that I found intriguing. So let's go to the first, what the Pocket Network is all about, including your founding story of Pocket Network.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we really, I have a few fundamental beliefs about the space today. One, I believe that all, if not most, of the world's value will be facilitated or coordinated by blockchains. And that means there's a lot of data that's going to need to be passed from your laptop or your cell phone to the full node on Ethereum. And as we were kind of figuring out our idea, we saw that that there was really only one infrastructure provider at the time that was really doing 95% of all the traffic. And if we are building these systems that will become their own institutions, it felt very problematic for us to only have one or a handful of companies really operating the core piece of infrastructure that we use to access data. So really, at the end of the day, what Pocket does, it's a protocol that incentivizes people to run full nodes for other blockchains to then serve data to applications. A very simple example for that is if you open up your wallet and you see that you have 5 ETH in your balance, and you see that little loading screen, and then the 5 ETH kind of pops up on your screen. That data comes from services like ours, and it's very important for that kind of core base layer of infrastructure to be a protocol and I believe a public good for the future of the space. So that's really what Pocket Network does. And then we have Pocket Network Inc., which is the development company that has built protocol, which is what I am the CEO of Pocket Network Inc. But yeah, so Pocket is an L1 blockchain that incentivizes people to run full nodes all around the world to then provide data to various different types of developers and applications. So we've got DeFi, gaming applications using us, lots of wallets, these other indexers as well. So really, at the end of the day, everyone needs a full node. And to kind of distinguish it a little bit more, we work really well with the just-in-time data. So this is what is pretty commonly known as the RPC, or remote procedure call. So it's like you want some data within the last 50 blocks or something like that. Pocket is a great service for that. The other piece of information that you're seeing when you're using any Web3 application is more indexed or historical data as well, which is something that we can't support. But today we're really just laser focused on solving this RPC problem.
Got it. Now I'll go back to the thing I found interesting when you talked about your background, and it's you said people get rugged by Facebook or Twitter APIs, right? When I think of people getting rugged, I think of the developers, or I think of Lazarus, or I think of bad actors. I had a balance in a WhatsApp, and I converted from Facebook, from on WhatsApp, from regular to a business Facebook WhatsApp, and my tokens were just mysteriously gone, right? I didn't think of it as being rugged by the Facebook API, right? How do people get rugged by these, the Facebook APIs, and what can we do about that?
Yeah, so there's plenty of stories of people building their businesses, for example, on Google, where they change how their algorithm works, or they choose to show different things on top of yours. And you then have no option when your entire business is built on that, for example. So there's plenty of stories of businesses completely getting killed from say 100K revenue to 10K revenue overnight because of the change in the API, or how they changed the sorting or ordering of things. When it comes to Facebook, for example, they used to have a great gaming system with back in the day. And overnight, you had Zynga, you had a bunch of companies that were built on the back of that. And overnight, they decided hey, this wasn't conducive to our business. We're going to change that, right? And the nice thing about and the realization about when I really launched my first smart contract is that I could define what those rules were, and no one could change it, right? Which is really important. And not even I could change it once those were defined, right? And now that everyone knows the same rules of the game, everyone can play on kind of an even playing field, if you will. When it comes to things like that. So when I say the Facebook or Google or Twitter, Twitter had a bunch of open source clients when they first launched, and then they shut that down, for example. and people were building legitimate businesses on top of Twitter back in the early 2010s, right? Either Twitter acquired them or just completely shut down their APIs so that people couldn't build those businesses. And we could have had a very flourishing ecosystem of very different Twitter clients and that sort of thing. So when I say getting rugged by an API, it's the centralized company changing the rules of the game, basically. And that's what's really powerful about this space, is that you're able to deploy a smart contract or build a protocol like Pocket and have the users of the platform dictate what changes should be made moving forward, which is really important. And those users are the ones who are building the businesses and really deriving the value out of what's being built.
So you're helping developers not build upon centralized infrastructures. You're helping empower developers through building decentralized infrastructures. What do you focus on with that? How do you do it?
That's a deep question. How do you do it? Well, at the time we started thinking about this in late 2016, 2017. There wasn't too much available at the time. So really it's, staying focused and kind of designing out and architecting the white paper for the first version of Pocket. And then from there, taking a look at what technology is available to see what we can leverage to actually build it itself or build it ourselves, right? So at the time, when we kind of finalized our first version of the white paper in 2019, really the only available options for us to launch something was either on a smart contract on Ethereum, it was either on a Cosmos Tendermint chain, or potentially on Polkadot at the time. And given, and this is something very common today that we see, that we saw back then, given the volatility of the Ethereum fees, it felt like it was infeasible for us to launch Pocket as a set of smart contracts on Ethereum. And we opted to choose the Cosmos and Tendermint ecosystem because they had a nice consensus, persistence, which is storage, and also the peer-to-peer layer already kind of out of the box with Tendermint. Which is needed for a blockchain. You need the consensus, Byzantine fault tolerance. You need some way to store the data with the persistence, and you obviously need some way for the nodes to communicate with the peer-to-peer network. And we were able to just focus on building what's called the ABCI app within the Tendermint ecosystem. And I would just think of it as just an app that connects into the protocol portion of what they built, and spent almost a year building that out and launching the V0 version of the protocol in July 2020. So Pocket is recently 3 years live on mainnet. But really, the process of building this was really a lot of trial and error. We'd go, I spent a lot of time going to conferences, testing the idea, seeing what people thought, if it was important. We obviously thought it did, but it was important to get some validation from others. We kept getting yes, and we kept building it out. And there'd be, I'd say, hey guys, we're building this thing, and some people who are incredibly smart would be like, hey, yeah, but how do you protect nodes from this scenario in a permissionless network? And I'd be like, that's a great question. I actually have no idea. And then I'd go back, work with my co-founders, and then we'd figure out the problem. And it was a very iterative process in that respect. We really have tried to not reinvent the wheel. And we've always tried to use the existing technology to really leverage the existing technology that was available at the time to build what we have up until now.
Cool, very cool, awesome. So I want to back up a little bit to a basic question. Well, I mean, not basic, but I never heard of this. It's called DPIN, right? What is DPIN? And why is there a growing focus on it today?
Yeah, DPIN is Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Networks. So it's a long way of saying protocols that incentivize people to run servers, basically. The actual hard infrastructure that even the internet runs on today, which you see Google, Amazon, Microsoft have a lot of the cloud market share today. You have DPIN, which is more individuals contributing their server resources to various different infrastructure protocols. So I would say, Pocket is something like this. All of the storage protocols like Arweave, Filecoin, IPFS are under the DPIN umbrella as well. I would say the indexing protocols like the Graph as well. Folks who are and what I'd say is that these are folks who are either owning and operating their own servers within data centers, or renting bare metal servers within data centers, and that's purely because of the cost of it. It's much cheaper to own and lease some space in a data center than spin up a server on Google Cloud, for example, or Amazon Web Services. And really, the whole thing behind DPIN is that you've got all these folks the whole thing behind DPIN is really that we believe we can provide infrastructure much more reliably, much more cheaply, and much more quickly by virtue of being decentralized. So rather than, and because of the way that infrastructure works, if you are in Turkey and you're hitting a server that is in US East, for example, that's going to take a long time for that data to reach you, rather than if that server was in Frankfurt, for example, if you think about just the speed of light and that data going back and forth, right? And the key piece here is that by being able to incentivize people to purchase these servers or rent them on bare metal providers, you actually have a much more distributed and much more cost-effective underlying network that then, that value then gets accrued to either the application or the end user that's building on top of it.
What I love about podcasting is I learn something new every day. So it's good. Okay, so the centralized infrastructures that exist today pose some issues in blockchain networks, right? And these areas include outages, monopolies, censorship. What are some of those issues? And then how do we deal with them?
Yeah, I mean, we see AWS going down pretty regularly. I know they've gone down several times in the last several years. And having dependency on one single service provider is what causes real outages when it comes to some application, right? When there was a pretty severe outage a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, where good chunks of the internet were literally inaccessible at the time, right? So when you have DPIN, right, you've got in most cases dozens or hundreds or even thousands of individuals running infrastructure in different setups at different data centers. So no matter what happens, you have the resiliency there that avoids these sorts of outages. The other piece, when we talk about the infrastructure, is, I think you mentioned privacy or security. We had the tornado cache issue happen about 18 months ago, I believe, and that was the U.S. government saying, hey, you have to sanction these addresses because of the tornado cache, which we're still seeing litigated today. And to be able to have a network that that can't control whether something gets hosted or not, just for security and privacy sake, is really critical. I mean, I think we're all saying here that it's privacy, for example, is just a fundamental human right on the internet, and we want to be able to build things that help enable that at the end of the day. And that's not to say that if you're breaking the law, you shouldn't be prosecuted or anything like that, but that doesn't mean that we can't respect our privacy as individuals and as humans. So I do believe that these different infrastructure networks that are being built are going to go a long way in helping provide that.
And these, tornado cache, interesting. What is the, did they really break the law? Is it really a law broken, or was it that entities don't understand decentralized infrastructures, and maybe and if they don't, they should, right? And how are these decentralized infrastructures better equipped to handle, these critical areas of privacy and censorship and stuff like that, when they're not really understood by the people who are creating the laws?
Yeah. I mean, that's the question of our time, right? I mean, at the end of the day, they built a tool. A tool can be used for good and for bad, right? I can use a hammer to build a house or hit someone in the head, right? So at the end of the day, it's what's the infrastructure around the tools that help ensure that we don't have bad actors or people doing illegal things or whatever it might be. And when you have networks like Pocket that are truly international, the US may have sanctioned, Pocket Network Inc., which we had to comply with as a gateway provider. But that doesn't mean that the supply side of the network that's in Europe or Australia or South America need to comply with that. So at the end of the day, what happens is people can then, find alternate routes to access the data they need for their applications, or even services like Tornado Cache. In a future world, when we have our V1 version of the protocol, they could have been able to install our SDK and completely bypass a gateway altogether, and just directly communicate with the nodes rather than having an intermediary like Pocket Network Inc. that is helping provide a good user experience and endpoints and these sorts of things. But at the end of the day, if you need to access the data, you should be able to do so permissionlessly, right?
So one way to that decentralized infrastructures are better equipped is the access to nodes, right? Quicker communication, and then what are some others?
Yeah, we our head of protocol, Daniel Shansky, there's a lot of trilemmas in the blockchain space. He coined the RPC trilemma. So that's reliability, performance, and cost. So those are when people are using Pocket, they're actually using Pocket on the merits of, in most cases, on the merits of the quality of the service itself. So really a big piece of the promise here from not just Pocket, but many deep in networks is that reliability, performance, and cost benefit. So to give some examples here, on the cost side, the cloud is by far the most expensive. There's kind of three levels of infrastructure, if you will. The cloud is by far the most expensive. If you're running or renting a bare metal service, that's a one single server that you're renting at Hetzner or OVH or something like that. It's generally about 5 times cheaper than the cloud. And if you're purchasing a server and then hosting it in a data center yourself, you're looking at something that's 2 to 3 times cheaper than the bare metal option. So when we talk about cost at a fundamentals level, the question is where the value accrues in the value chain, right? We've got Amazon and we've got Google that have obviously accrued a lot of value with what they're building. But it's our belief that if we're building this kind of modular ecosystem within not just the protocols, but you're going to see the various different pieces of the middleware stack being built on top of it. That value is going to accrue across the board from the very bottom of people running the servers to the end user using whichever DApp, right? You see it with how people are trying to solve MEV, for example, and where that value is accruing, and just generally, I think we'll be in a better world with these protocols while being able to accrue lots of value, but being governed by the users at the end of the day. So there's a performance side of things, right? If you look at an infrastructure provider, they're generally in 1 to 3, maybe 5 regions around the world. We have the ability to launch many more regions much more quickly because we don't bear the underlying cost of running that infrastructure as a company, for example. So we actually have 16 gateways around the world where the end user can then access their information, ensuring that you are connected to the closest node humanly possible so that you can get your data as quickly as possible. And then especially on the reliability portion, we have a lot of redundancy within most DePIN networks, so that full nodes, for example, are very finicky. They go out of sync, they go down, they restart, and having many people operating these nodes, not just in one region, results in a lot of redundancy, ensuring that you have basically full uptime with your application, right? So those are really the main portions there, and I'd say that Pocket Network Inc. we're building a business on top of Pocket Network, and we are now load balancing, serving real users, and I'd say we're probably the largest scale company, doing 1 to 2 billion requests a day with a completely permissionless network underlying us, which I think is a really cool and amazing thing.
You reminded me of something when you talked about Amazon, and I don't remember if you remember this. I used to have a BRD wallet, right? and I was trading back in 2018, 19. And at the time, Amazon said, we'll never, ever enter the crypto space. And so I had a technical complaint with BRD, and I got an email back, and it went through Amazon. Amazon was the underlying infrastructure that BRD built their decentralized wallet on. I was like, I don't understand why, this is happening. So I want to talk about, the middleware stack that you use, you know, how does that work and how is it decentralized and how we're not relying on the centralized, players. What makes you different and unique?
Yeah, so you've got a company like Amazon, massive company, and the actual company is what's coordinating the global infrastructure footprint that they have with all the data centers that they have around the world, right? That company has overhead, it has costs, they have to take a margin, which are incredibly high. They take incredibly high margins with what they're building, whereby you have a protocol like Pocket, which coordinates this infrastructure the same as an Amazon would, but doesn't take any rent because you have this network of individuals who are then directly providing the service. And the important part is that the coordination is happening via the protocol's rules that everyone is agreeing by. And as a result, you're removing out one very critical and important cost center and coordination center and where decisions get made, and saying, hey, it's either no rent and you're not the protocol is not taking any rent, and the actual users of the protocol are dictating what the rules are, right? So a protocol like Pocket has a DAO. The DAO votes on various things, whether it's the monetary policy, the DAO treasury, or protocol upgrades. But the important part is that this protocol, and what I view blockchains as purely just coordination systems. They're coordinating humans, and there's not been very many of those in the history of humanity. And these are really the first ones that are, native to the internet, which is even more impactful. But at the end of the day, you're removing this massive need of overhead and replacing that with a protocol that doesn't take any rent. And that, for me, is what's really special about not just Pocket, but many other middleware protocols that are being built, whether that's Arweave or Fleek, or some of the privacy preserving stuff like Aztec or Hopper nodes, for example. These are all different middleware protocols, but at the end of the day are solving things in a similar way, where you're kind of removing the need for a centralized company to have require all this overhead and replacing that with a protocol that doesn't take any rent.
Would the same be true for like the centralized Oracle networks?
I would say so. Although I'd say the costs or the scale might be a little bit different. The important part about Oracle networks is that it's very difficult for a blockchain to take exogenous information and making sure that data is on-chain data is true and validated is really what Oracle networks do. I think it's actually an interesting notion there. Pocket is actually kind of the inverse of a chain link, where chain link is taking external data, verifying it, and then putting it on chain. We take on chain data, verify it, and then send it out to the end user. So we're a bit of an inverse in that respect.
Interesting. I think you probably need to put both together to work well and efficiently in order to,
Yes.
Great. So, let's talk about efficiency quickly. In a world where, say, there's no AWS, there's no centralized player, you have an efficient RPC process, right? And everything's running, optimized. What's possible? What becomes possible in that kind of world?
Oh man. Well, I think it'll unlock a level of compute that we're heading towards that'll make the world it'll make the leverage that we have as humans incredibly high. I mean, if you saw NVIDIA's recent earnings report, the whole AI movement is exploding. It's definitely bubbly right now, but it's pretty inevitable that we're going to need as much compute as possible particularly as more and more commerce and what we do just moves onto the internet and I believe eventually on chain. There's going to be more need for more compute across the board with everything that's happening, and to be able to unlock more of that with more efficient, cost-effective infrastructure, I think it's going to be beneficial for humanity, particularly when what's unlocking that are these protocols that are public goods that are governed by their users, right? You could get in the whole debate with, OpenAI and so on and so forth, with that being not open source, right? Where we're having these things that are open source, usable by anyone, forkable by anyone, will generally be much better for the world, in my opinion.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm interested to see how that plays out. Right now I'm a little fearful of the AI whole thing, but yeah, how do you think it's going to play out?
I wish I was knowledgeable enough to have a really good answer, but I'm generally a pretty optimistic person. Humans tend to figure things out when things are on the line. We've made it this far up until now. I think we just have to be prudent with how we think about things like the regulations. And I think having new institutions like we're building with these different blockchains. I mean, I would consider Bitcoin and Ethereum literally institutions at this point, right? Helping provide governors or kind of breakers, if you will, to how the stuff gets managed. I think will go a long way in helping out humanity to some degree. But generally, I'm more on the optimistic side. I'm a big believer in kind of the solar punk vision and using technology as tools to enable ourselves as humans, right? So, and we tend to be pretty creative when things are on the line, at least up until now. So,
I agree. That's a good perspective. Thank you. So, I want to thank you very much for your time today. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I enjoy speaking with you. And I'm looking forward to all the great things coming out of Pocket Network. And my last question is this: how can people find out more information about Pocket Network, about you, about what you guys are up to? How can they follow your innovations in the space? How can they do any of that?
Yeah, I definitely go to pokt.network. That's the main overlay website for everything that's going on. And also our Twitter is at POKT Network as well. And that's been pretty active. We got a pretty incredible community. I think another I wanted to give a shout out to Pocket News, POKT News. Whoever's running the account is doing an incredible job with keeping up everything that's going on in the Pocket universe. So, and if you want to follow me, I'm on Twitter at it's my last name at O_Rourke. So replacing the apostrophe with an underscore.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Jamil. Likewise, it was a pleasure.